Hello and welcome everyone back to another iteration of Quick Hits where I quickly review 4 to 5 games each episode before giving the games a rating out of 10. These games fall into the category of either not being too long, not that deep, that just don't warrant their own review, period. This isn't to say these games are not inherently bad in any way, just that there isn't a whole lot to talk about with them, but just like any other review, we'll stick to the basics of going over the same 3 things in story, gameplay, and performance on the Steam Deck before giving the game a rating out of 10, so let's begin. Starting off today, we have Forgive Me Father, a game inspired by the original Doom, drawn in a comic book art style, set in a Lovecraftian setting where a Cthulhu-like monster is warping the world as we know it, so you set off as one of 2 characters in the priest or journalist. Being one of the few sane people left in the world, you set out to find answers and take on the eldritch horrors that lie in wait for you. Much of the story and lore is told in these collectible notes that you can find across the levels, but if I'm being frank, I really only found a few of them and I honestly didn't care to read them. I'm sure it was cool stuff, but I would have preferred a more straightforward approach to the storytelling, but it is what it is. Gameplay wise, it plays like a retro boomer shooter. You have a good selection of weapons, from melee weapons, pistols, shotguns, explosives, crossbows, and so on. There's a skill tree with a decent amount of stuff to level up, and you can upgrade your guns into cosmic horror-filled versions of themselves that add both buffs and debuffs while using them. There's also some minor abilities you can pick up along the way that is represented by a meter you fill up as you kill enemies. The levels are very conservative in how they're built, leading to a game feeling a bit like a corridor shooter at times, with you walking over the same corridors, just like new paints put over them. Enemies vary wildly, not only in the artistic design, but also with the healthy variety of them, all with their own unique traits. There's also a couple of boss fights mixed in for good measure. But the 4 that there are, I honestly really found the 3rd one to be interesting. The rest of them, including the final boss, were all a bit of a slog to deal with. Not because they were hard necessarily, but they were just tedious. And I think that's the worst thing a boss fight can be. Not hard, not interesting, just overall tedious. Performance-wise on the deck, it definitely could have been better, especially for a game with the Steam Deck Verified badge. The game has a bad habit of just having hitches across the board. While the game has an incredible art style and visuals overall, they're consistently interrupted by stuttering, frame drops, and just overall game freezes. For a game with a rather simple graphics and gameplay that's pretty straightforward, it has far too many bugs and overall issues. Final 3rd act of the game, I was having drops into the 20s and 10s, and the only way I was able to consistently fix this is by exiting the game and rebooting it. A number of sections just seem to be buggy overall, and even after I would restart the game, I still have poor experiences with it, with frame drops and stuttering. Not to say that it ruined the experience, but obviously you never want to deal with bugs in the game. After 12.5 hours and 8 of the 20 achievements unlocked, I had more fun with the game than I expected, as boomer shooters have never really been my thing, but with the combination of art style, unique setting, and when working gameplay all mixing together pretty well, I left feeling very satisfied. 7 out of 10 for me. I recommend you pick up the game when it comes on sale. Up next, we have Nodebuster. Story-wise, there isn't really a whole lot to say. The entire objective is to basically upload a computer virus to hack the system. There's no dialogue or anything, you're just told what to do and then you go. Gameplay-wise, you start off super weak as you incrementally level yourself up to get enough power to not only buy more upgrades, of course, but have enough to actually initialize the upload of the virus. The skill tree is much larger than you might expect, and you can always feel like you're pushing to the next step pretty steadily. It's one of those games that more or less just kind of is like round up to round up to round until you get to the very end of the game. It does stall a little bit in the middle section and can feel a bit grindy, but I will say overall the game does a good job of avoiding that feeling. Performance-wise, it ran perfectly on the deck. The only time you'll notice anything of note is the later stages when you start to live long enough so the game starts sending a million enemies at you, and there's just 1,000 explosions going off on the screen at the same time. Otherwise, it ran perfectly, and it hardly had any pull on the Steam Deck's battery. Normally, I don't really care for much for these shorter games, especially when they try to get all cute and artsy to try and pass it off as a reason to spend $30 on them. But I spent $2 and I got 5 hours worth of fun out of it, so how much more can you really ask for it than that? Easily 9 out of 10, go buy it today. And if you're one of the people who like getting 100% of all the achievements in a game, this is an easy one for you to get. Next up now, we have Ryse Son of Rome. Now, I contemplated whether or not this deserved its own video, but when a Star Wars kid game takes me longer to beat than this, I had no choice. Ryse Son of Rome is a story about avenging those who got your brothers in arms killed by betraying the Empire and allowing their own idiocies to decay Rome from within. This inevitably leads to your father's death as well. Marius, with the help of one of the Roman goddesses, takes it upon himself to avenge his fallen brothers and father by killing Nero and his sons after their negligence proves to be far too costly and ends up decaying the empire. It honestly could have been something good, but it was overly short to the point where the plot twist isn't really one at all because you can see it coming from a mile away. So when Nero puts it all together himself, it just kind of leaves the player thinking, well, yeah, I don't know why it took us so long to get here. On the gameplay front, it gets really old really fast. You have a light and heavy tech and a heavier version of both. Once an enemy is weakened enough, you can do a finisher, which is basically just a Q2E sequence that is an essential part of the game, no joke. Ironically though, you don't even have to push the right corresponding buttons to get it to work right. You don't even have to do that on the harder difficulties. I don't know if that's just a bug or a choice the devs made, because the only thing pushing the button correctly does is that it gives you a higher score. I don't know why we're keeping score in this kind of game, but okay. Final sequence, when all you're doing is executions, is something that I kept messing up on accident, and I still beat it the first time around. It's not even bad combat per se, it's just super shallow and tedious. Performance wise, it was a really mixed bag. The game ran worse than I expected, especially in the early stages when I was getting constant 5 to 10 frame drops every time. Medium settings or high settings, it really didn't matter. The frame drops were just constant. Stuttering, textures, pop-ins, frame rate instability, they were all constants across the board. And because the game looks the way it does, it eats battery pretty substantially. I mean, I guess you could give credit where credit is due and say the game does stand the test of time because it does look pretty good in certain aspects. Emphasis at times though, because most of the good looking stuff is just close-ups of cutscenes or character models speaking, or large battle sequences where the camera is clearly moving in a way to hide the shitty graphics where they are and just trying to keep things blurry so things just look better than they actually are. As a side note, the achievements are bugged real bad, with the gameplay constantly being interrupted by fake giving me achievements when I know I didn't earn them, so why are you telling me that I did? In the end, it still baffles me that this was an Xbox One launch title for multiple reasons, especially given the length, because while shorter games are looked upon more favorably now, they definitely weren't back then. Though in the case of Ryse Son of Rome, the game ends where it should, given how repetitive it is. For what it is now, I can see why some people have kind of warmed up to it, and I think the game could have been something, how they just fleshed out the story more or made combat more engaging. It's not bad. I mean, I've definitely played worse games than this, but it ain't good either. It lands firmly in the middle at a 5 out of 10 game. Last up on the docket now, we have Serial Cleaner, and I'm going to be honest outright and say I was not a fan of this game. But that's because the premise sounded cool, and I thought it looked like it could be something that's right up my alley. I think my own expectations just kind of created a letdown for me. The story is far more deeper than I expected, even if it ends on a low note. Anyways, you are the cleaner, the local guy everyone calls when they need a crime scene cleaned up and the evidence lost. While cops patrol the scene, you sneak in and clean up and leave without a trace. Cleanup scenarios have a wide range of different scenarios, from outdoor slashings, dance floor cleanups, bar shootouts, and more. Aside from the decent map selection to clean from, you can also find bonus contracts and bonus costumes that are both callbacks to 80s related things. For example, one of the bonus contracts you can find is inspired by the Aliens movie. Gameplay wise, you're really only doing one of three things: cleaning up the crime scene via mopping it up, picking up key evidence, and avoiding being seen while disposing of the bodies. You can do this by either throwing them in your trunk for later, or using a handful of tricks like throwing them in a garbage disposal or in a tank full of fish. My biggest issue with the game actually stems from the gameplay itself, but not in the way you may think. While I think the level design is mostly good, aside from the game not doing a great job at times showing you proper depth, which I suppose is going to happen in any 2D game, it's the fact that the cops are blatantly inept and are really annoying to get around. At any point in time you get caught in the vision cone of a cop, they'll run after you and they'll either have to run away or hide, but you can just jump in a closet right in front of them and then just walk away a few seconds later thinking, oh, it must have been the wind. I really can't take a game seriously when there's no real consequences for anything. The patrols these cops do are super rigid, and I feel like 50% of my playtime was just waiting for them to move out of the way so I could sneak by. Because when you're caught, they'll run after you, but of course after only 3 seconds, they lose all speed and are now slower than your normal walking speed. So you can just clean up the crime scene with them really chasing right behind you, because they can no longer catch you. Unless it's the black Afro cop, which then they just run even faster and they don't get tired, which, I mean, that's kind of funny, but whatever. The game was just overly simple while also being annoying, as being caught makes you restart the level from the beginning. And I mean, they had to punish you some way, but I think because the game was just not fun, I just found it more annoying than maybe the average person. You do respawn back into these levels though. Bodies and evidence have a chance to spawn in new locations, but they have very limited spawn points because the maps are rather small. So, I mean, changing up where the things are doesn't really matter all that much. Performance wise, I had no issues on the deck, so at least I could give the game that. Though for a small indie game such as this, I would think that's the bare minimum. I will say I did really like the art style and the 80s aesthetic. Whoever designed that side of the game clearly had a passion for what they were doing and nailed it. Also, I thought the soundtrack added some nice ambiance to the whole game as a whole. Overall, the game took me just over 3 hours to beat, and I unlocked 16 of the 28 achievements while doing so. I did 2 of the extra contracts, which, side note, there are some missions that have cameras in them, and those ones suck. If at any point in time you are caught by a camera, it is just an autofill, which I don't even know why. I mean, who was looking at these cameras? Through the trailers of the Steam page and just what the concept of the game was, I really thought this would be a nice, fun indie game, but it just lacked any real depth, and the game felt more like work than playing a game, especially with how tedious some of the levels could be. I wouldn't recommend this game to anyone, honestly, and it was just a huge letdown overall with how little fun there was to be found. So I'm going to give the game a 3 out of 10. Sorry to end on a low note there, guys, but this is going to wrap up today's episode of Quick Hits. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you played any of these games before, let me know what you thought down in the comment section down below. Let me know as well if any of these games caught your eye, if I discouraged you or I encouraged you from playing them. Let me know any of your thoughts on these games down in the comment section down below. Don't forget to follow me on social media. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all later. Peace.